Welcome back. This is our final session for NAB 2024, and we have an AI roundtable, without a roundtable, in fact, no table at all. But we're talking about AI and filmmaking. Are we doomed? Very non-controversial title. And we have a huge panel here, as you would expect from such a controversial topic. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, starting with you, Ryan. Go ahead.
Ryan Steelberg, I'm Chairman and CEO of Veritone. We're a 10-year-old enterprise AI company, and media and entertainment is one of our major divisions.
Hi, I'm Eric Toulaine. I'm Head of Product and Design at Atelier, and we do a media supply chain platform, AI-powered, of course, and I'm really glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Glenn Mulcahy. I'm the CEO of my own company. We do training and events, but I'm also the former head of innovation in a national broadcaster.
Hi, I'm Terry Morgan. I'm the co-founder of LumaTouch, and I started LumaTouch along with Chris Damaris in 2016, and now we have the world's most highest rated mobile professional editor in the world, and that's LumaFusion. And I'm very excited to be here today because we started LumaTouch with the idea and the passion for storytelling, and I think storytelling is about to change.
Hi, I'm Michael Cioni. I'm the CEO of the company Strata, which is a new tech startup company, 10 years, 10 months, but there's room for everybody.
All right, we're going to kick things right off, and the first question is, given all the craziness of generative AI, what do you think we're going to see as the most significant change in the film industry over the next 5 years? I know it's a very tough question to answer, but let's take it away with you, Michael.
The change, I think the most predictable change in generative AI for storytelling will actually be, it won't change as nearly as much as I think people are anticipating it will. I think overall, most of what we do will ultimately stay the same, and I place my bets on AI in the form of a utility or an automation or a bespoke task that is done in a laborious form versus the actual art and act of creating. I don't think actually we're going to see a large percentage of this community overtaken by generative forms of AI.
Well, I hope you're right, but yeah, but I do think whatever change you think it's going to bring about and whatever impact, I think it's going to be bigger. And I think that we're enthralled as a community here by disruptive technologies like 3D and VR, but those are disruptive technologies, and I believe AI is a displacive technology and will be for many small businesses and independent creators. And the reason I think that is because this industry feeds itself. As I edit or shoot or make graphics, I'm hiring the work of other creators in the industry. And if I don't have to hire someone to make my voiceover or make my graphics, those people are out of work. If I don't have to hire someone for editing, a company like mine will be out of business. So I don't take lightly the fact that we have no guardrails in place for this technology.
Yeah, I mean, I very much agree with both of your sentiments on it. I think the one thing that has to be mentioned is that AI as a term is actually a very, very narrow term. In fact, it's a huge blanket of different kind of services and applications. And I mean, a lot of the preeminent sort of futures in the world right now are saying that everything that they've predicted has already effectively come to pass, even those predictions might have been expected for another 5-6 years. So that exponential curve of development is a thing that's really, really hard to predict. And the fact that we're trying to futurecast into 5 years, I think, is really, really ambitious. I'd agree with Terry. I think displacement is going to be the predominant thing. And I also think that there's a certain thing about generative AI, which is that it does feel, and I don't want to go all sort of wishy-washy about it, but it does feel soulless. So I think, to quote a term I think I saw you say, I think we're entering into a phase of a great polarization. So I think there's going to be a lot of early adopters who are super excited about it. There's a feeding frenzy around the funding side, but on the flip side of that, the end users, like I've done talks about AI for the 4 days here, an awful lot of the end users in my audience are literally looking at me going, AI, what? They know ChatGPT, but a lot of the other stuff is not in their even peripheral vision right now. So I think we're obsessed with it where we are right now, but it's going to start creeping in for sure.
So I see AI as a tool. So to me, it will help enhance productivity, monetization, all those use cases. It will help make less mistakes. I don't see it to replace human. We will still need like specificities of human skills, like creativity. Some of those skills the machine is not able to replace, right? So what's going to happen in the next 5 years? That's a really important question. We see the progress going faster and faster, especially in the last few months. And I think it's important to set in place those guardrails, especially on the legislation side, on intellectual property and how we manage that. I see there's a lot of things happening in Europe right now, and yeah, we have to be part of this change and embrace it and make sure that we're not impacting the rest negatively.
Agree with most of the elements on the panel in different ways. I think it's inevitable. I think AI is going to be part of every workflow, every process. I think what's really fascinating about this is, we've had forms of automation and ability to, index media and content for years, but the speed of what we can do this now is not just looking at new creative, but the entire continuum of the content lifecycle, whether it's archive and CBS News and reimagining Walter Cronkite all the way to, let's say, next generation cutting edge film production, right, in movies. It's going to be pervasive. I agree it's going to be 100% utility efficiency gain first. But I do think, and we're heavily involved in both the individual side and also on the, I'll say, studio side, these new technologies are not just about the production itself, but it's the individuals, the actors, the actresses. You talk about voiceover talent and the like. Legislation is always behind. This one's happening so fast, it slowly will catch up, but frankly, legislation is not going to slow this down. So I think for all of us is to understand we need to turn our humans into superhumans with AI, and it is going to impact jobs. CGI was very similar, right? It eliminated or transformed some of those elements of production, but look what it did to the overall industry. It grew significantly. And the last time I checked, right, Oppenheimer and others and Nolan, they're shooting, as you know, on film, right? So there's going to be flavors of what consumers are going to ultimately want in the future anyway.
That's great. Okay, so there's a lot of fear out there, obviously. Some of the generative tools just blown people away. I mean, I think all of us have been surprised over the past year at one level or another by what's happening. What are some of the things you think people aren't thinking about that will actually be significant? Some of the kind of hidden changes, areas where AI will have an impact that people aren't really even thinking about yet, or certainly aren't hitting the headlines.
Well, that's a good one. It seems like everybody's going in full speed on every little derivative of this opportunity. But I think ultimately every single production is going to have writers in their agreements with talent that's going to have a digital human clause, right? What they can and cannot do with their digital avatar, with their synthetic voice. It could be limited to post-production with their approval only. But I think it's going to be pervasive. It creates great efficiency gain. It needs to be controlled. It needs to be governed. But I think that's going to be ubiquitous. We announced something earlier today with CAA, where it's called the CAA Vault, the big talent agency, where we're not just looking at building archives and indexing the film libraries. We're actually building and archiving the training data of the individuals themselves. Right? People in California, it's statutory law that you own your name and likeness. So I think you're going to start to see a much more IP-centric phenomena around AI, around the individual, as well as, I'd say, the rendered or fully produced production.
That's a really good question, and I think that something that's currently being overlooked is change management and how you ensure that you integrate those tools within your workflows, but you also think about the human aspect and how you help your people not fear this change. How do you help them use those tools, because they will be commodity at some point, and everybody will have to use those tools and know how to use it. Otherwise, they will be irrelevant. So, yeah, that's it for me.
I'm going to go a little bit more general on it and talk about like the movement within the AI space overall, which is, we've heard a lot of talk, if you listen to, again, futurists in this space speaking about the idea of a sentient computer, predictions of how far that might be away, and then the idea of the singularity, possibly 2040. But if you listen to guys like Ray Kurzweil, who are cutting edge and often seen to be the futurists in this space, they've already made predictions for 2029 that passed 2 years ago. So again, with this exponential curve, I think it's going to blindside an awful lot of people with how fast it's going to happen. And I will also say, though it's a little bit off topic, is this year where there's so many elections all over the world, is I think the first time where, up until now, what has been kind of somewhat opaque with how it could be used for manipulation, I think is going to come front focus this year all across the world for how it can be used for nefarious things. And that's the bit that's going to surprise a lot of people.
For me, the thing I think about most is the breakdown of our right to privacy. In order for AI to do all these wonderful things that we want it to do, not only in this industry but in others like the cure for cancer or help with global warming, it must infringe on our privacy because it needs information from every discipline, from every location, from the social level down to the individual level in order to do that. And I think to be left out of that would be an incredible shame. So I don't want to come across as anti-AI, I'm not, but to lose our privacy is a serious thing. And frankly, we already have lost it without even knowing it. The privacy policies that we're signing, and even our families and our kids are signing privacy policies that are 34 pages long and say that it can look at our health data for a video editing app. This is insane. We can't keep doing this. We need guidelines, we need laws, we need the copyright law to catch up with what we're doing. And as individuals, we need to take responsibility and read the privacy policies and be very careful what we do, because there are different kinds of AI, as you folks know, but there's a very private, ethically trained AI, and there's a not so ethically trained AI, and then there's AI that you use a product and you're giving away everything all the time. So I think privacy is the thing that, to me, is just the most egregious thing that we're facing, and we've already lost that battle. Here we are talking about NAB and looking at all these wonderful products and features, and there's companies like Strata and DaVinci Resolve that are taking privacy seriously, including LumaFusion. We will not breach your privacy, but there's a lot out here that are just doing whatever they want. And when you see something that looks cool and is magic, and especially if it's free, it's not free and it's not magic. It's doing it with the information you've provided, and I'm really afraid of that.
I think an interesting thing to think, what did we miss, what are we not thinking about, is we got so excited about how good it looked, how fast it got there, that we actually forgot to ask, I think, the most important question, which is it viable as a business? And it's easy to get hoodwinked by how good something is, but we all know stories of companies that were first to market or early to market and they might have even had the best product, but it didn't penetrate through. I think we skipped those steps and said, let's just deploy it, and there isn't enough data or experience or knowledge to know, is it even a viable business? What I learned recently and started evaluating is the generative AI space. We all do know, most people know this, it's incredibly expensive. It is insanely expensive to train models. And a company like Stability AI that makes Stable Diffusion, if you think your internet bill is expensive, their internet bill is $99 million on compute to be able to make Stable Diffusion work. The problem with that is that money, when these companies started, was cheap and interest rates were low. And so it's possible that as interest rates have risen and money is expensive, that the posture for being able to allow people to take their time to figure out the technology will run out of cash before the technology even gets there. And we may be left with unfinished results because we didn't figure out how to make it a business before we tried to make it a business. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I'm spending my time trying to figure out how to make money. I don't even know yet. That's the funny thing. We're moving so fast. I'm like, I think this makes money. Does anyone need this? Will they pay for it? Or are they just going to churn out? Because a lot of products we see make an excellent demo, but that's about it. And you see the demos that they make are great demos. And so if you need to make a demo for a living, Gen AI is awesome. But if you need to make a living with the products from your demo, Gen AI doesn't do that yet. And so we have to remember to separate that.
Oh, that's like
So at the top end, absolutely. But sometimes technology rises from what consumers are doing. And I want to say, you can open some products, I'm not going to name, but type a one-word command. It'll write your script for you. It'll voice your script for you. It'll add video you didn't shoot. It'll add music you didn't create. And it will publish it in various formats. And you have typed a one-word command. That kind of, it may not be really something that we would, find tasteful in our business, but consumers are watching that. And if it's okay for consumers, then who are we creating for? So we need to watch the lower end technology as it rises up and gets better. And there's other applications like where you type in one word, it writes your book, it illustrates your book, and publishes your book. So I think, we need to watch the bottom end come up as well.
I want to quickly just go back to your earlier commentary about just privacy, and we need to do something about it, right? I'm curious from all of you, do you think it's even possible to bring real regulatory change to some of this stuff at this point? I mean, we had some news this week. I think that some of Firefly was purported to have been trained on Midjourney content, which at the first generation you could argue is not copyrighted content, but when Midjourney is trained on copyrighted content, now all of a sudden you have Adobe, their training data being polluted by content that was not, they did not have copyright access to from a kind of second generation of access. So we have situations, for example, like the EU mandating approval of cookies on websites. So there is some precedent for some kind of control on this stuff. But do you think we can actually get to a place where, as a global community, we can put restraints on this thing?
I mean, I think last week SAG passed some standards where they weren't going to use, the studios weren't going to use AI. And I think that can be done across the board in different ways. I mean, to some degree, the ship has already sailed. So, the AI we got from that, there's no way you can put that back. It is what it is. I'm going to pass this to Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I guess the really interesting thing is the training data and the models that they use. So in the early days, it was Wild West. They just data harvested anything that they could, and there was, we'll pocket enough money from the billions that we're getting in investment to deal with the court cases. Kind of a maverick approach to a certain extent. A friend is a data scientist and actually is involved in LLMs, and he sort of said the risk right now, though, is that we're getting to the stage where because of the legal challenges and because of the changes in posturing on the actual kind of licensing, what they've started to do is get large language models to train large language models. And there's a real risk of corruption, because you've heard of the black box syndrome, you've heard of the idea of hallucinations. So it's a really weird inflection point. I think that's why we're starting to see the likes of, well, as you said, Adobe paying whatever it is, $10 for an hour of footage that user submitted, Spotify basically licensing all their content for learning models. Again, to go back to your point about privacy, that's what you need to watch as a consumer, because every piece of data about you is effectively being commoditized without your consent. But yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting inflection point right now. So in order to keep up with the rat race of them getting better and better and better incrementally and trying to stay ahead of the posse and be the first all the time, most of the big developers are in this frenzy to try and get more training data. If they corrupt it, though, the whole house of cards implodes. So it's one to really keep an eye on. Anyone else on it?
Just a quick word. I think regarding privacy, we already gave up on our privacy 2 decades ago. We have had social networks here and there where we subscribe and we gave our data for nothing, for cheap. So today, I don't think that privacy means anything anymore. We have data leaks are happening here and there. Data is just becoming a money, it's a currency today. So I don't see anything changing here. On the IP side, yeah, there's a lot to say, but yeah, it's going to be really important to understand what differentiates the machine from the human. Like, as a human, I'm going to create art which is based on my own sensitivity, but also what I've been influenced by. I've liked some artists in the past that I still remember, and that helped shape the art that I'm creating. How is it different from the machine? That's, I think, a good ethical question, in the sense that the machine is also inspiring itself from the models that we are giving it. And if we're giving models of models, it's going to somehow create something unique, I would expect at some point.
Yeah. I got started in the ad tech space in 1994. So I've been in sort of the early days of neural networks and how we're, frankly, trying to identify who to serve ads to, right? It goes to the core of fundamental privacy rights. Back when I started, I actually had the AOL key. I knew everybody. I didn't have to try to infer who you were with a cookie. I knew who you were, right? Laws changed, right? As a company trying to make money in my 20s, right? We had to figure out a way, well, how do we figure out how to target somebody based upon, right, web header data and inference data and IP cookie-based data. As businesses, we were trying to figure out a way, adhering to the changes in laws, but we always try to find a way, right? I'm trying to serve you the best targeted ad. I bring that up is there's just a lot of parallels, right? There's a reason why a lot of the big ad tech companies, I worked at Google for a while, why they're sort of the leaders, frankly, in many of these AI revolutions. We were, frankly, trying to serve ads around content, and when the mobile phone came out, we lost screen real estate. And so now we had to look at what's inside the content, and that was really where I'd say cognitive sciences erupted. So the problem is the open web, which makes everything we're experiencing now so exciting, is the search index, right? Even the pre-Google days, the openness of the web created what the exponential growth of it. So it's a combination of finding the right opportunities for us to continue to grow, find profitable businesses to continue to move us ahead, but self-check. We have to self-check. Like we call it, like for our business, working with AWS and Microsoft and working with the Linux Foundation, right, which has a lot of passion. We're going to have to self-police ourselves here, right? If we get too ahead of the curve, right, we don't want the show to stop too quickly. But again, I just see a lot of parallels of what happened, right, to your point, with a lot of abuses in advertising tech, that now hopefully we can learn for some of those, and legislation at least is more aware of how quickly these things can change.
So I agree with you, and having a person in a company with the keys to the world is very different than unleashing a technology that can not only do good things, it can also do incredibly bad things to the entire world. So, like, I don't think there's a real answer here, to be honest. It's not like I'm arguing to not have AI. It's too late. We have it. But I really think that we need to look at a bigger picture. We're standing on the beach admiring these grains of sand we're getting from Sora and all the new products here we see. And we have our back to the ocean and there's a tsunami coming. Honestly, think about what's going to happen if even 10% of our industry is displaced at the same time as 10% of every industry is displaced around the world. Yes, there will be new jobs up in tech, but the joblessness for all these people here at NAB that don't have the skills to do that, and every other industry is shocking. And I know I sound incredulous. I sound like just an old fuddy-duddy, but honestly, this is scary, and we need to pay attention to what's going to happen.
I think, Terry, one of the things interesting about that is if you look at the history of industrialization, we've really our medicine has kind of just kept up with our ability to introduce carcinogens into our environment to kill ourselves. So the human life expectancy is not dramatically improved through the industrial age, because even though medicine's gotten better, we've damaged the environment in our aggression to be first to market with things, not really vet things. So it seems like, unfortunately, you know, if you're going to be cynical, we're not going to handle this well, right?
And I don't view it as a form of cynicism, because I just think that whether or not we have an ability to do anything about this, we don't have a choice but to try. I view it as an opportunity for all these people in this industry to think about what we're doing and to make guardrails within our own companies, within the services that we choose to use, within the products we choose to design, and take responsibility for not doing things that add to the big problem that I think we're about to see.
Michael.
Yeah, but my response to that would be that we shouldn't decide. I don't think we have a right to decide what is right or wrong or good or bad. I don't think it's that simple. If someone wants to write a book with one line and it makes a photo and a library, so what? I don't care about that. I think that's totally fine. If anyone consumes it or not, it's okay. It's totally fine. It's no one. What I like about AI is that you don't have to need a Stradivarius to be a violinist. It can start anywhere, and it should be open. If someone wants to make a movie and they can't afford it, and there's any tool that makes it a little bit easier, our job is to make that thing that makes it a little bit easier. And so while all the privacy and conception there, the stuff there is absolutely necessary to explore, if we over-regulate ourselves, we're actually going to stifle innovation. What will happen is we will watch that innovation take off somewhere else. And the jobs that we lose that will happen, that you're talking about, will be in this space, but the jobs to gain from it will happen in another space that didn't hold back too much. And I understand that's a delicate balance, but I find it extremely unlikely that this room of talent loses its jobs because of AI. I find that extremely unlikely. Not impossible, it's certainly possible, but very unlikely. And our opportunity is to build for this future, and we've gone through this from Betamax and VHS. I don't actually think it's that different. Disney made a massive lawsuit against JVC when VHS came out because they said it's going to ruin everything. Home video is going to ruin the market. And they were not only wrong, they were the profiteers better than anybody of the home video market. I don't know that this is that dramatically different because of the copyright concerns that they brought up in their original lawsuit 40 years ago, but we found our way through that, and we're able to create and get Bambi to more people, I suppose, in a way for that. So I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always looking at the bright side of things. Glass half full is the only glass that I'll drink out of, and so I really want to see the positivity of that. So I'm aware of it, but I'm excited for what it could yield, and I hope this industry reacts appropriately for that potential and doesn't restrict ourselves so much that we miss an opportunity.
Glenn.
There's a load of amazing podcasts. I mean, literally, it's hard to choose the best ones, but there's a couple of names I want to throw out, and just if you've heard of them, fantastic. So Tristan Harris and Ezra Raskin is the second name. These two guys have done a lot of talks over the last couple of years in relation to the potential threats of AI. These are two guys who are at the cutting edge of technology. Like, they've been involved in startups, they've been involved in all the big business like Google and so on and forth. And their messaging is really, really simple. It's like, yes, there is no question that there's an awful lot of huge positive potential. Medicine being one. You think about the aging thing, there's already one guy, I've forgotten the name, who's saying that we can reverse it at the gene level and give you like 200 years of lifespan. So I mean, there's some amazing stuff happening, whether it comes to fruition for everybody, up for grabs. But to go to your point about, it doesn't matter if AI writes one book within a day for one person. You're missing the point about the scale. It's not one person who's just going to write one book. It's 10 people that are going to basically flood Amazon with a couple of million books that are all AI generated. And it's already starting to happen, and Amazon has already started to try and combat it. So what? Okay, well, I'd hate to be an author trying to make a crust. One final point on it. So I mentioned Ray Kurzweil and his one. the guy who is often credited as being the godfather of this, a guy called Geoffrey Hinton, he was interviewed in 60 Minutes about 6 months ago. He was in Dublin, where I live, basically just last week, getting an award for his contribution to scientific achievement. And he was interviewed in my station, and he basically said, guys, the reason I left Google was because no one was taking the existential threat seriously. And I started this, and I'm putting my hand up going, we need to take stock. We need to think about ethics. We need to just take a little pause, deep breath, and at least agree some framework. That has not happened yet, although that letter that was generated, whatever that is, a year ago, did have some hope that maybe it could happen. I get your enthusiasm, though, genuine.
Ryan, you actually have a policy of ethical AI for your company, right? You want to talk a little bit about what you've
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
thought?
it's, we call it very simply AI for good, and we work and collaborate with other institutions, and it's such a broad topic, but we try to be very specific in the verticals where, frankly, we're building and selling software and AI solutions. So if it's public safety, a very sensitive topic as it relates to AI. We have hundreds of police agencies. The DOD and the DOJ are clients of ours. In certain municipalities, we don't use AI for real-time biometric tracking of you walking around the city, but we do it with all the production of audio and video data from body cameras, dash cams, and helping investigate murders, human trafficking. These are all things that we're actively involved in, and there's no way we could do this without AI at all, not even scratching the surface. So to your point, we have to self-regulate, because I firmly believe that this is a tool that if we don't embrace it and find the positive applications for AI, we know the malicious intent is going to be there. It's going to run rampant forever. One just comment about the Google thing, just off, is what really is different about this one is we, corporations, we've been keeping a lot of the tech proprietary for our own benefit for years, right? I mean, we all know Google, if you want to say celebrate them as primarily, right, the entity behind the transformer-based models, right, is they didn't want to necessarily open these up that fast, as we all know, right? But unfortunately, somebody dropped the bomb, right, and opened up ChatGPT, and so now you saw almost this bizarre, unstructured release of everybody else's technology, and that's what's scary, because now it's become a public arms race. And it's the first time in my that I've experienced where the military or the porn industry, right, is not the advancers of the big breakthroughs, but it's public. To your point about you have to look at the ground up and the top down, is because, to your point, that one individual, you're right, he can train his own model and create that one book with a single word prompt. But you also have corporations doing the same thing. It's the first time that a revolution has been able to be in the hands of the individual and Tim Cook at the same time. So that's why this is so radically different. It's going to have tons of carnage, but obviously I drink from the half cup full as a lifelong entrepreneur. But I think it's more than that. I think it's imperative that we drive the positive attributes of this side. So I still think our mission is self-regulation for a while, because I think the laws, it's so complicated. Look at us right here. We're foremost experts. I mean, imagine, our legislative branches trying to understand this stuff, right? So again, I think it's going to have to be a lot of self-policing with your own ethics, whatever your ethics are.
Okay, I want to pull things back a little bit, specifically to the film industry. So there's been a lot of kind of wow factor around Sora, obviously. The first time we've really seen continual generated content that's consistent worldview, geometrically it's structurally accurate, you can camera track the stuff, so very impressive. But there was a little tech paper, maybe not too little, but Emote Portrait Alive, I don't know if you guys have seen that, I'll include it in the link. But basically, that's the thing that startled me the most out of recent news. Takes a photograph and an audio file, picks up the emotional cues in the audio file, and generates full performance from the face out of that one audio file, and really without much uncanny valley. So I'm curious, what do you guys think in terms of how far are we away from synthetic actors, and what's that going to look like?
I mean, it's been there for a while. I mean, we've been doing animation movies for a while, so of course we still had the actors behind to play the voices, and you still had the writers to write the story. but I feel it's just an evolution of that, and there will be some copyrights and ownership that needs to be sorted out, because a lot of voice actors, for instance, now don't want to have their voice used by an engine. So they're going to ask to have in their contract, my voice is my voice. You can't use it. And I don't know how it will impact the rest, how we will use the synthetic voice or synthetic avatars or whatever we can create. But there will still, I believe, people will be still chasing for truth on the content that they're looking for, and they will still look for authenticity. And yeah, I think that we won't just buy everything that is AI generated and just take that as food. No, we will need still to sort out and try to find the nuance on what we consume and how we want to consume it.
The short answer to it, to be very brief, is that's we're well past that. There's a Spanish marketing agency that created an avatar of a character about 6 months ago, and she now basically is displacing influencers in Spain because she's already amassed 1 million followers. There's another influencer who's created a virtualized version of herself, and you can book a date with her virtual avatar, and she's monetizing it and has made a small fortune. So I think it's fair to say that ship has sailed. But the one thing I would just touch on to that is that idea of content provenance and being able to tell reality from AI generated. So I've been teaching and tracking, particularly in photography, over the last 2 years. And if you look at the early models, it was always a tell, a spare finger, an eye slightly wonky, some weird gesture, right? On my Instagram feed now, because you know the way algorithm works, you hold on one shot and it gives you 55 more of them, I no longer can tell the difference. And I've been passionate about photography since I was a kid. I used to run a mobile photography competition. The fear was we will give the prize to someone who basically just generated with, Mid-Journey, whatever. So we're at that point where actually the audience is no longer going to be able to tell the difference. We're very close right now, which then raises trust and provenance. These are the two things that I think, I'm background in the news industry. This year, again, is going to be one of those ones where if one of the big brands gets it wrong from some fake news that was generated by AI, that could be damaging to their brand and almost irreparable. So yeah, it's a really interesting point, but we're there.
So, yeah, I mean, I agree. We're already there. There's so many products out there that show that we're there. But I think the question is really how long until traditional methods are thought of as quaint hobbies. So,
I think what's kind of I mentioned earlier that these are really good demonstrations. I think in stills, you're absolutely right. That's really fantastic. There's a theory out there that there isn't enough data on the internet to train enough video algorithms to be able to produce the exact same indistinguishable likeness of a person that could run at length. So the taking a fake character and generating them at length without indistinguishable difference from the real person. There may not be enough data yet to even get that right where we can't tell. Now, animation, characters that are not real, that gets a little bit easier. We can get away with that today. But if you really want to remove a person and put in someone that's not really there, automatically, we don't have a way to do that for more than about 6 or 7 seconds, right? And the data required to do that with motion blur movement and quarter and eighth turns and things like that gets really hard. And I mentioned earlier in business viability, it's tied to that because the money required to get it there is running out. And so it's interesting, in photos, we're getting there really close, we're getting there really fast. The difference between still and motion is not just 24 times a second, it's 24 million times more complex. There's so much else going on. And so the delta between a perfect photo and a perfect motion picture it may actually be impossible. It may be impossible given where we are in certain regions today. Certainly, it is, in my opinion, it's not possible to do that in a story that we would actually pay to watch in an appointment viewing situation. And so when we think about how we decide to watch AI, every time we are looking at content, it's important that we do not paint a brush across everything that says, content generated by AI, our attention spans change based on where we physically are and what we're physically doing. You're not going to start watching Oppenheimer in the grocery store checkout line. Your brain is like, this isn't the right place to start that movie. It's an appointment, and you treat it differently, and therefore it can be treated differently by our community because we don't just watch anything anywhere. We typically find ourselves watching certain types of content in certain places. So an influencer that's generated for fake is highly perishable content, and it really doesn't matter. It has very little meaning, even to the people that like it. It has very short lifespan. But Oppenheimer, we use that for whatever reason, is something that has a very long lifespan. And it's very complicated to make that movie with film, let alone a computer. And so I think in highly perishable content, we need to categorically analyze, this is where AI has an inroad, an easy foot to get in there. But in long form motion pictures, to try to take a show like, Queen's Gambit and generate that complete with a computer is so far away, maybe impossible to generate that type of creativity and long form, millions and millions of frames. To generate all that today, there isn't enough compute in the world to generate all that. It doesn't exist. So no matter how good a still is, there isn't a way to just multiply that into motion. The complexity level of that is really just phenomenally big.
I appreciate you saying that. I can't help feeling, though, that we're going to have a paper come out next month that can, in this age of like exponential growth, it always seems like every time we think something's impossible, someone comes out with something that moves the marker that much further, that much faster than we expected.
Well, it is. And think of it this way. Most of us here, even though it's unfortunate, we're the best we're ever going to be. We may have a few more years left in us here and there, but we're the best we're ever going to be, and we start over every time we have a baby. It just starts over, right? We're not going to exponentially grow. But the AI of today is absolutely the worst it's ever going to be, and it's going to exponentially increase, and at some point tip a little bit too far.
Ryan, let me...
Yeah. I think it's going to happen a lot faster. I think to your point about making it commercially viable, just give you a couple examples, is DraftKings is one of our clients on our advertising side. Almost all of their audio-based ads are purely synthetic. Okay. Now, again, that's with the full engagement of the voice talent, right? Signed approval, verbal approval. It comes, and we've built, voice is easier, right? It's less arbitrary. I put up some people like the Roadblocks pixelated avatar to deal with. Other people freak out when it's a photorealistic avatar. That one we've taken a kind of, for us, and our recommendation to our clients is, let's let the technology mature a little bit, but voice is done, okay? If you go to Cameo, Coco Melon, if you've heard of those, almost all of those characters now where a parent can say, hey, I want Coco Melon to call my son and wish him happy birthday. All synthetically driven now, okay? So I think, by the way, we're not talking about tens of dollars, we're talking about millions of dollars now. So I think you're starting to see real impact. I do think, and I'm curious to see how good Tom Hanks' movie's coming out, right? So we talked about it yesterday with CAA and Zemeckis, and that supposedly that entire show with him is going to be completely synthetic AI driven. We'll find out. So I think that's the litmus test where there frankly is an unlimited budget. And to your point, let's start at the pinnacle here and see what happens here.
That's great.
Just on the training data, it leaked about a week ago that when more of the training data models started to become inaccessible, OpenAI wrote a script to basically start to harvest like terabytes of YouTube content to do learning models. So yeah, I agree. I get your point though about the processing power and the draw.
And to be clear, if they can't have the right data, they're going to create their own synthetic data in real time, right? And by the way, just one other comment, like hallucinations are not bad for certain applications, right? We're in the creative industry, right? At times, I want to take the hallucination thing to end, right? I want it to come up with, let's break physical boundaries that we're accustomed to. It's like an inception on steroids here. So I think there's, you're going to start to see some radically cool, innovative concepts that obviously started with human beings' mindsets, but you're removing, I'll say, our narrow pathways that I have to define this universe based upon my physical understanding of it. That's not the case with some of these large language models. So who knows what that's going to happen, right?
So when the models become multiples and their complexity increases, they can band together in federations to learn from each other, as we were just talking about. And from that, you get things that are amazing and beautiful, like Sora. Those are called emergent properties. They're not things we expect, and we never know how they're going to come out. They could be good, they could be bad, but that's an emergent property. We have no control over those things. So, yeah.
Eric, did you have any? You're good? Okay. I want to pivot. Obviously, we care about artists. I hope we do. So I'm curious to hear if you have practical ideas of how we can get artists paid, whether they are part of the training set and we're paying them on that end, or how is it that the people that contribute to the art that we train these models on are going to get compensated for what they're contributing? So I'm just curious if you guys have thoughts on what that might look like.
I mean, to me, as you know, probably by now, that is the problem, right? Not only have we not been paid, there's not a real easy way to do that. It would take a lot of different laws and a lot of different standards. So when we look at our industry, maybe the top level, the top tier of creators can get paid because they're working at such a level and with such a budget, and they're so talented. Maybe they're a wonderful piano player. In fact, I talked to one today that was just like, she's an incredible piano player. And she said, I'm very pro AI, but I'm working with an AI company, and I was stunned when I walked in and the AI could play a piece of music composed and played in a few seconds compared to what will take me months to do. And she said the most shocking thing is it had the emotion that she thought was unique to her. And with Sora, it's general AI. So not only does it know how the wind and the water and the light is playing off of every surface, I think that's because it's general AI. But what the shocking thing is that it created a beautiful and compelling scene. And that is something we think is unique to our humanness. And what that shows us is it's not.
Thanks. So in the question, how do we monetize it, help people? So if we think about like a technology like Airbnb, they have a technology to make hotel rooms appear out of nowhere, right? And that's kind of what it does. And what's really good is that it allowed people who just had extra space to monetize a room or a garage through a marketplace, right? And you didn't have to have a hotel to be able to do that. You didn't have to build that infrastructure. Or you think about Spotify or Apple Music. These are marketplaces in which, unless you had a record deal, you had very little ways for your music to be able to get to anyone's ears. But the marketplace allowed people that have very little money and a couple of microphones that have a halfway decent record, it can get out there, and that reaches more people. And then they get paid. Maybe they get paid fractions compared to a band, but there's more bands to consume, and there's more choices for people to find, and there's more hotel options to sleep in with Airbnb. So if my answer for how I see AI materializing in my business is through a marketplace, and allow marketplaces of engineers who have a talent to actually build for a marketplace, and then they get a revenue share on people that use the model for a specific application. And I'm only talking about creative applications. Outside of DoD and stuff like that, it's a world I don't know, but in the creative space, there's a lot of engineers that can solve little problems that we have and we can apply to our footage. So separate total generative AI, which is what this conversation kind of became, to combining AI into in real life. Because no matter what we say with generative AI cannot show who's going to hit a home run in the World Series. It has to happen for that to happen. And the photo of that person doing it doesn't get generated, it has to take place. And so when we work in real life, AI as an augment to be able to solve things that we didn't ever solve. I just saw a great story that I didn't know. One of my favorite movies, very underrated movie, is James Cameron's The Abyss. And in The Abyss, there's a drowning scene that's incredible. And when you watch it for the first time, or maybe the fifth time, you can't breathe watching this scene, which is probably a bad pun. But what happens in this scene is in the middle of the scene, the camera operator wipes the lens off with a rag because there's water on it. And no one has noticed this, but it's there. And as soon as you point it out, there's a guy who does this in the middle of the scene because Cameron said, this is the best take, we're going with it, and you can't shoot that very many times. That's the type of thing where in real life I got the moment, and I could remove this little moment if I wanted to. Where in Cameron, he's like, I just have to hope people don't see it. And it's so well done, we really don't. It just looks like a blurry thing happening, but you literally notice it. And so I think it's the in real life combination where AI models can be put into our in real life space, solve little problems, and then there's compensation, just like an Airbnb tax or a Spotify or an Apple App Store, right? Apple makes only a couple dozen apps, but there's tens of millions of apps out there that everybody can try to earn on if they're good. And so I think that's a place that AI is going to help in the monetization space for us.
I'll just throw the SAG-AFTRA kind of, the 6 months where the actors all suspended work because of the idea that they were going to be sampled and they basically used digitally in perpetuity. What I would say is that we've probably passed the Rubicon. I don't think any of the actual data sets that have already been harvested, I don't think any of the big generative firms are going to come back and go, oh, we should try and track everyone that was used and pay them a little token to say thanks for whatever. It's gone, let's be fair, that's not happening. There is no doubt, I mean, friends of mine work as professional voiceover artists, they work in the industry, they are petrified. A good friend of mine only the other day, she tried 11 labs, 3 seconds of her voice, handed it a script, and she literally broke into tears when she heard it played back to her. So you may get to the point where people decide, okay, I mean, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm going to sell my digital ID and that's it. I don't have to work. It's going to do it for me now, and I might hear myself saying something I never said, and I'll get a kickback, and I better get good at something else. And that genuinely is my fear, that we'll get to the point where the only option is either sue, which may get you money if you can afford to sue, or else succumb. And I really don't think those are good options, but hey.
One of the problems I just want to address, because I don't think this comes up much, is there is a difference in what we're talking about with training a model and contributing to that model as compared with content aggregators like the App Store or iTunes, in that if you put your song out on Spotify or iTunes, you have the opportunity to rise to become a known entity that has the opportunity to earn a lot more money. Whereas if you're just being included in a training database, you're part of the Borg mind, right? You're just one drop in a massive data set. So it's not like you have the opportunity to shoot for the stars in terms of your overall final revenue. There's no breakout opportunity there like there would be in a traditional marketplace. So anyway. Eric, did you have something you wanted to?
No, I think that I agree. Somehow we'll have to find some way to monetize this content and to help the people who own this property to be compensated. There will be way more competition, bro, because it's like stock footage. It's like Airbnb. It's like Uber. You are providing the ability to everybody to become part of something they don't have to commit totally to. So they can provide their apartment, they can drive for someone, they can provide photos that they shoot this weekend. They will be able to provide their voice, or maybe their face, Now, is it going to bring a lot of money? I'm not sure. Will some people be able to rise on the top because they have really specific features that make them valuable for storytelling? Potentially, but yeah.
So I think we all remember the early Google days, right, with Viacom and that whole lawsuit that ultimately, we have the Digital Copyright Act. So you got to think about it. We've already set a precedence that you and I, or anybody, can upload stuff to YouTube, right, with no consequences, right? It could be, one of our clients is the Masters Golf Tournament. And not only do we help like ingest and index all their content with AI, we're also tasked with policing their content, right? As you can imagine, I mean, the second this stuff is airing, it's being clipped and published, and we have to spend a lot of time and horsepower and GPU power because obviously Google wants to help us to a point, right? They make a lot of money on misappropriated content very quickly. And the problem is when it's news and sports related content, the half-life of viewership is so short that by the time you find it, you've already lost 90% of the impressions. But think about that. What I just said is that we've already said it's okay, as long as you report it, and obviously Google's responsible and is obligated to take it down, or they give you the option as the IP owner to do a rev share with them, right? So now we're putting the lens back on us as individuals, whether it's voice talent and whatnot. We've already set the precedence with the Digital Copyright Act, and I think you're going to see some form of a derivative of that that's going to go down to the individual NIL IP level, not just to, I'll say, the production level.
Okay. We've hit the hour mark, or just about. So just for each of you, if you could just give one wrap-up comment of whether you're bullish or bearish on AI, whether it's exciting to you or you're terrified. Obviously, we have some people that entire business model is banked on it. But yeah, just your thought, just an encapsulation of ultimately where you think this is going, and if you're feeling positive about it or negative.
Well, I'm very bullish on it. We just did, and fully appreciate the discipline of self-policing and making sure that humans are in the loop. I mean, this whole thing is, you'd say it's, on the loop, in the loop, out of the loop, right? Humans need to be in the loop, right? There's going to be instances where they're completely removed, and just kind of say to put, really our statement, on our sleeves and be truthful and honest about that is we just completely rebranded our company, right? I mean, our whole thing is that it's about super empowering humans, right? That's our new, right? Making humans even better, period, right? We're forcing, and am I giving up some opportunity as a business? I probably am, right? But we're fully committed to keeping humans in the loop in this migration, because if we don't, I do feel that in terms of the scales, the malicious intent and the malpractitioners are going to take advantage of it. So,
I'm bullish as well. One of the important topics that I love is localization and making sure that content can be shared with all audiences over the world. I'm a big consumer of foreign content, I mean non-English speaking content, non-French content because I'm French. And I feel that being able to provide everybody in the world the ability to share their content with everybody who want to consume it is powerful and great.
Oh boy. Okay, so two things. First thing I would say is I would agree with the idea that self-regulation is the only option because no governmental legislation is going to be able to keep up because of the exponential curve. For me, the only possible solution is to flip it and to actually come up with some sort of digital rights for people, so that you actually know exactly what your rights are, you know exactly what you're entitled to, and you know exactly what the protections are, because it's fair to say that we've taken a kind of a Machiavellian approach to your privacy in that sense, and you said that very well, Terry. The other word, you didn't give petrified as an option, so I used to call myself a kind of an intented futurist, but I got 4 kids under the age of 12, and every futurist right now is saying for the first time in history, we cannot predict 10 years down the line. No one knows if you go to university right now what actual jobs will be available to your kids in 10 years. So yeah, petrified would be the word I'd use.
Well, as a small business owner, I think I have some big choices to make about whether I want to make decisions that are seemingly somewhat unethical to me. So I have a choice of using machine learning with ethically sourced data in my app, and that will get me somewhere. Or I have a choice of using an encapsulated LLM and bringing that into my app and getting a little bit farther. And maybe I don't share my own customers' data, but then I would be riding on the backs of the thousands of people here who have unwittingly shared their data. So as a small business owner, I'm kind of like, well, that doesn't feel right to me. Or I have the choice of just going full hog and taking and giving and everything, take the info, give the info, whatever. but I obviously won't do that. So for my company, I've thought a lot about this, and I had to make a decision that my personal ethics and the ethics of and we talk about it a lot in our team, what is the right thing to do, and our entire team agrees that this is, in a sense, it is a great product. We love our product and we love our company, but we are people and we live by our ethics. And so we've decided to only use ML, machine learning, that is ethically sourced. And it may cost us. It may put us out of business, frankly, someday. But I think ultimately for what we do, which is video editing, there's always going to be people that are passionate about telling a story and love the actual process of telling a story on a timeline. And when I watched the AI talk the other day, they said, well, we're going to go from 90% process and 10% creativity to 90% creativity and 10% process. And I thought to myself, I love to tinker. The process is the creativity. That's what I do. Like, if I'm not doing that, who's going to pay me for doing nothing? And he said, oh, you'll be able to spend more time at home with my kids. And that'd be great, but nobody's going to pay me. So, so I think for me as a business owner, I just have to make the most ethical decision I can, knowing that I will have to be pretty nimble to survive in that space.
I don't really work with generative AI. I'm not in the generative AI space, and it's not really part of the technology that I use in my everyday. But I've owned several businesses, started several businesses, and had several exits. And the advice that I keep coming back to myself is a quote from Steve Jobs, which paraphrased is, if you don't cannibalize yourself, someone else will. So the way I just keep nimble is to try to be unafraid of discovering things that do put you out of business. And that has, for me, led to the ability to figure out what I should do next. It's the stagnation and the hesitation that allows, that actually ends up hurting, I think, the momentum and the building and the idea of figuring out what the next step is. None of us really know. And that data you just shared about the colleges is very, very interesting, very scary. But I feel like for me, it's all about figuring out what is going to put me out of business. And if I can figure out what that is, that's where I start to point to North Star. It might not help me 10 years from now, but it might help me make immediate, healthy, good decisions for what I need to know. Thankfully, I don't have to know what I have to do in 10 years. I don't have to make those decisions today. And so if I can make good short-term healthy decisions, and we can do that as a community, we can hopefully work together and add on year after year so we can last longer and create the whole time. But self-cannibalization is the trick that I use to try to make good decisions in the short term.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in on this. I think the one thing we've determined is no one has any idea what's coming. We can prognosticate, but really it's a mystery. I remember Mark Andreessen recently said, I believe it was him, that generative AI or large language models were not an invention, they were discovery. No one really understood fully what this was going to look like, and we still don't. We're still emerging that, but it's a journey. I think it's clear there's a consensus that we have to start getting intentional about how we approach this. This is not going to work if people just blindly consume the content, consume the models, and do nothing more than just let the thing roll. And so obviously the more people can start thinking about this, be aware of this, think about the impact it has on humanity, the better off we're going to be. But thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of the show, and we'll see everyone at provideocoalition.com.